Ja, schönen guten Vormittag nach Österreich. Herzlich willkommen zu unserem Webinar The Future of Legal Tech and Compliance in Indien. Mein Name ist Hans Körtnagel, ich bin der österreichische Wirtschaftsdelegierte in New Delhi. Der Hintergrund ist, wir organisieren regelmäßig Webinars unter dem Titel The Future of, wo wir Sie vor allem über zukünftige, aber auch aktuelle Trends informieren. Das heutige Thema ist, wie gesagt, Legal Tech und Compliance. Und der Hintergrund ist, dass Indien auch als Produktionsstandort für österreichische Unternehmen immer wichtiger wird. Wir haben derzeit 160 österreichische Niederlassungen, regelmäßig kommen neue dazu. Und der Hintergrund ist auch, dass die indische Regierung dezidiert Indien als weltweiten Produktionsstandort etablieren möchte. Das beruht auf 3 Säulen. Einmal massive Investitionen in die Infrastruktur, um die Logistik, die Umgebung, das Ökosystem attraktiver zu machen. Wie gesagt, jedes Jahr 130 Milliarden, die in die Infrastruktur investiert werden. Ausbau der Schiene, der Flughäfen, Hafenumschlag, Schienennetz und so weiter. Und der zweite große Bereich ist Industrieförderung und der Titel Make in India, wo Unternehmen immer mehr sozusagen überzeugt, gedrängt werden, in Indien zu investieren. Der dritte große Bereich, wo die indische Regierung sehr aktiv ist, ist die Verbesserung der sogenannten Rahmenbedingungen. Da geht es um Bürokratieabbau, da geht es um Abschluss von Freihandelsabkommen. Wie Sie wissen, Ende Januar wurde eine Vereinbarung erzielt über ein Freihandelsabkommen mit der Europäischen Union. Wir haben derzeit ein Exportvolumen von 1,5 Milliarden Euros von Österreich nach Indien. Und wir gehen davon aus, wenn das Abkommen, das könnte kommendes Jahr bereits in Kraft treten. Derzeit läuft der Ratifizierungsprozess bis Ende des Jahres. Wir gehen davon aus, dass nach Inkrafttreten über einen Zeitraum von 5 bis 6 Jahren noch einmal ein zusätzliches Potenzial von 1,1 Milliarden besteht. Das heißt, immer mehr Unternehmen, österreichische Unternehmen kommen nach Indien, produzieren hier. Und wie gesagt, und die indische Regierung setzt auch sehr stark auf Digitalisierung, setzt darauf auf Bürokratieabbau. Und das ist genau das heutige Thema. Wie schaut es im rechtlichen Bereich aus? Also immer mehr im Unternehmensbereich wird digitalisiert. Da geht es geht auch darum, die Arbeitsgesetze zu verändern, die wurden verändert. Und natürlich auch mit der Digitalisierung ist natürlich ein enormes Thema, auch der Datenschutz. And now switch to English. I would like to thank our prominent speakers of the day for addressing this very important topic. And now I hand over to our Innovation Officer, Mr. Ajay Singh.
Thank you, sir, for the initial remarks. And from my side, good afternoon for the ones joining from India and good morning for the ones joining from Austria and rest of the world. Today's webinar is a very special one where we discuss about data protection to IT SMEs to the basic of the company formation in India. And without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Ankul Manjal, Country Director, Dejan Shira & Associate, India, to deliver the keynote. Over to you, Mr. Manjal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ajay, for the introduction. My name is Ankul Manjal, and I currently serve as the India Country Head for Dejan Shira & Associates. We are a multinational consulting firm specialized in international trade and investment into India and Austria being one of our priority markets. I would like to thank you, Advantage Austria, for organizing today's session and inviting me as a speaker on such an important and relevant topic, that is the new labor code and employment compliances in India, which is relevant for the companies who are operating in India or maybe planning to establish their presence in India. So over the next few minutes, I would like to throw some light on the broader aspects of the employment law reforms happening in India, and most importantly, how businesses should navigate this new change. Yeah, please move on. Yeah, we can move on. Right. So I think to begin the discussion, I would like to say that India's human resource and employment landscape has gone through a very clear shift in the last 15 to 20 years. The jobs which you see right now, the nature of skill set required for those jobs, the kind of new age companies operating in India, and the globalization of talent as well as the working style is very different from what it used to be 15, 20 years ago. And accordingly, India's workforce demographics have also changed a lot. So we have seen a tremendous growth in the gig economy over the last couple of years, and the volume of gig workers, which is expected to triple from 7.7 million to an astonishing count of 23 million by 2030. The other angle is that, the good part of the story is that the female workers' participation in the factories have increased significantly, rising from 23% to 42%. At the same time, India is emerging as the global capabilities center hub with over 2,000 GCCs employing more than 2.3 million professionals. So the businesses are also kind of, demanding a lot of workforce flexibility, fixed-term employment, and contract workforce models. And especially in the manufacturing setup, if you see, the share of contractual workforce has significantly expanded over the last 2 decades from 23% to 40%. Now, these macro trends actually reflect a very fundamental change in the overall employment landscape of the country. The way people work today is very different, what it used to be 15, 20 years ago, which of course kind of triggered the government to launch the new labor code or the new employment laws in the country. Please move on. Right. So as I was mentioning that the workforce has evolved over the last 2 decades a lot. The regulatory framework of the country also needed to evolve with the same kind of pace. If you look at India's labor law framework prior to the labor code, so it was very fragmented and it was very complex framework with 29 separate central labor laws, each with different definitions, compliance requirements, and reporting obligations. This often created a lot of complexity for the businesses operating across multiple locations, and there was a dire need of simplification and modernization of these laws. At the same time, a large section of the workforce remained outside of the social security systems. There was lack of digitization, a lot of paper-based records used to be maintained, a lot of registers used to be maintained. Therefore, the government sought to simplify compliance, expand the worker protection, promote ease of doing business by introducing the new labor laws or the new employment laws, what we call, which is commonly known as the new labor codes in the country. So in short, these new labor codes are essentially, I would say, India's attempt to really create a modern employment framework, which is for the future generations and the future organizations to operate in India. Please move on. Right. So the introduction of the new labor code was a historic reform, as the old laws were never changed or to such a large extent. There were few changes in the past which kept on happening over the years, but not as big as this one. So these reforms actually merged 29 different labor laws and into 4 comprehensive labor codes, which is number 1, the code on wages, which talks about or which focuses on a uniform wage framework. Number 2 is the industrial relation codes, which basically focuses on the workflows, flexibility, and dispute management. The third one, which is an important one, is social security code that actually modernizes and expands the social security net for the new age workers, like the gig workers or the platform workers. And number 4 is the occupational safety and working conditions code, which actually ensures the employee welfare and workplace safety standards. So now these codes actually helped to reduce the complexity and overlaps which was there in the various laws. The legal sections got reduced by 60%. The maintenance of the registers, which got reduced by 90%, and the returns, which used to be periodic returns that has to be filed with the government agencies, they were actually reduced from 13 to 1. Though these codes got effective from 21st of November 2025, and most recently central government rules for these codes have also got notified on 8th of May, which is last month. However, I would say the challenge in implementation of these codes is that state rules, every state has different kind of rules apart from the central government rules. Those state rules are actually getting finalized in a very fragmented way. And there is a lot of confusion amongst the companies in terms of how do they proceed with the implementation. So there is no clear visibility in terms of what steps they should take really to move forward for the implementation purpose. Whether they should follow the old law, they should follow the new law. So that's a typical challenge what we have been foreseeing or the companies have been looking at right now. Most importantly, foreign companies which are operating through branches or project offices or subsidiaries are all fully subject to these codes. So there is no exemption per se for any of the foreign organizations who are operating in India. So I would say this is how the government actually tried to simplify the framework by merging all the laws and removing the duplicities and the overlapping sections into various laws. However, that does not mean that the transition is very straightforward to these new codes. There are certain implementation challenges which we will touch upon briefly in the subsequent sections. Please move on. Right. So these are few examples of what really changed through these codes. First, the new wage definition and its computation method, which has got changed. For many companies, this will result in increased cost in terms of increased provident fund contributions, increased gratuity, and other statutory costs. Second is fixed term employment. This will provide greater flexibility to the employers to hire talent for a very specific project or for a specific tenure without creating a permanent employment obligation. Number three, now employers can engage more women workers across all the shifts, including the night shift, subject to certain safeguards that have to be maintained. And number four, the compliances will be much more digital as compared to the previous regime in which you have to maintain a lot of physical registers and manual registers, which was subject to scrutiny by the labor inspectors and the authorities. And the last one is the full and final settlement of the employees, which has to be done within 48 hours by the organizations. So these are some select changes, which have been enacted through these laws, but there are many other changes which are not captured over here, and companies actually needs to evaluate their impact on their respective businesses and the state in which they operate, in the industry in which they operate. So every state industry will make differences to these implementation methods and methodologies. Please move on. Right. So most important aspect is that how do these laws actually impact the businesses? So the positive side is very clear that businesses will benefit from a simpler compliance framework and greater workforce flexibility. However, as I mentioned earlier, that implementation is not always straightforward. It would be required for the companies to invest time, effort, money in implementation of these new laws. If you look at the right-hand side of the slide, you can see list of certain challenges which are faced by the organizations right now who are implementing these codes. Number one, they have to reassess the salary structures because the definition of wages have changed in India. Number two, it will be a higher cost for them because of the higher social security contributions. Number three, the existing employment contracts and the legacy HR policies also needs to be revisited and updated in line with the new codes. Number four, most important one, that there are companies which are operating across multiple states. Now they are facing challenges because there are different implementation timelines and state-specific rules, which are, some of them have been notified, some of them are still work in progress. So that's creating a lot of confusion amongst the companies that which state has been implemented and which state the draft rules are there in place and the rules are not being finalized. The other challenges which we have been forcing and discussing with the organizations is that they need to invest in technology platforms to manage their compliances digitally. And the last one, which is again a very important one, is that internal change management, making people aware of these changes and ensuring a very coordinated effort to implement these changes between finance, legal, HR, and other impacted functions due to these laws. Right. So how do really companies implement these laws and what exactly needs to be done? You can see the broad framework for implementation. First, of course, the companies needs to assess the compensation structure, evaluate the impact of the new wage on the payroll cost and the employee benefits. Number two, as I was mentioning, that you need to review your employment contracts, HR policies, internal documentation to ensure alignment with the new framework. Third, you need to reassess your operational processes, including the working hours, overtime, contractor management, and the record-keeping requirements. And finally, as I was mentioning on the previous slide, there has to be a very clear understanding and collaboration between HR, legal, finance, and the payroll teams within the organization to ensure that none of the new clauses or new laws which have been enacted is getting missed. And development on state-to-state level have to be monitored very carefully in case your operations are into multiple states. So, as you see that these are the broad activities which the companies have to undertake to navigate the new employment laws. And it's the right time to take that action because the laws have already been enacted on 21st of November. And, we are seeing a lot of organizations who have not even started the implementation process with these new specific laws. So it's the right time to reassess your existing function and existing structures and policies and salary structures, and see what impact is it actually creating for your organization and take the requisite actions. As a closing remark, I would like to say that though the implementation phase of these codes may present certain challenges and apprehensions, which is quite natural whenever there is a new law comes in. But from a long-term perspective, these codes will certainly bring in the right kind of clarity, transparency, and support India's journey towards becoming a much more easier environment to operate in when it comes to labor codes as a section. So I think I would like to close my session over here and like to hand over back to Ajay to invite the next speaker to talk upon this. And we can take the questions towards the end of the seminar in case you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Munjal, for your insightful presentation. And for the audience in Austria, you can always ask the questions via the Q&A function or by the chat function, and I will collect all the questions and read it out to the respective speaker after all the presentation. And the second house rule is you don't have to click the pictures or record anything. We will upload this recording on our YouTube channel coming week. Then you can also have all the presentation. With that, I would like to thank you again, Mr. Munjal, and we will move to our next speaker, Ms. Lina Thomas from Global Business Inroads and the designated implementer of the European Commission's India IP SME Help Desk. And we would be very happy to listen to her views on the IP protection in India. Over to you, Ms. Thomas.
Great. Thank you so much, Ajay, and thanks to Advantage Austria. It's always been a pleasure collaborating with Advantage Austria and working closely with Austrian companies and helping, with your India strategy. And today, in fact, I've been asked to speak specifically about the legal and IP, journeys of European SMEs in India. And I don't know how many of you are aware that the European Commission actually has an India IP SME help desk to support SMEs and startups with, managing their IP in India. I think this is something, it's a very good initiative by the India IP SME help desk, because GBI as a company, really, we're 16 years old. We've been supporting basically scaling technology access into new markets for multiple years across India, Europe, US, and the United Kingdom. And what we have seen is that, either SMEs and startups are not thinking enough about IP. They're not even aware sometimes about this. So building awareness is very important. Or the second thing we see is that they don't even want to consider coming to India, because they think India is like China, and they feel that it's their IP will not be protected. I mean, I'm currently in Europe right now, and my daily life here is really meeting with technology companies that want to enter the Indian market, and I'm having different conversations with them. All kind of focused on, not even being aware of that they can manage their IP in India and protect their IP in India. And many of them are just, without having the knowledge, deciding not to come to India because of they're worried that their IP will be lost. So that's a quick introduction. In fact, today we are, I just have a very interesting example. We are helping about 50 EIC. I don't know if you're aware of the European Innovation Council. It's a European Commission platform that funds European entrepreneurs. Many of them are Austrian, to enter, to enter the India market. And we've seen that many of them are very happy to know about the India IP SME help desk and the services that are there. So some of the platforms actually that exist at the EU-India level are the Enterprise Europe Network. There is a European Cluster Collaboration Platform. I just told you about the EIC, and now the EU IP SME Help Desk. And really, what is the IP SME Help Desk, you might ask? It's really the first line of IP assistance for SMEs entering the Indian market. It's for people to really ask the question, how can I manage your IP in the country and get supported free of cost. But what I want to clarify is that we are not the law firm that actually actually files your IP in country, but we do connect you in the process, and I'll come to that in a bit as to where the differentiation of the services of the India IP SME help desk, as well as at what point do we transition you to lawyers to actually file your IP in India. So this is really about the help desk. We are not just in India, but we are across different countries like LATAM, Africa, Southeast Asia, and China. And it's to manage at a very, very, in a very, very focused way, how to manage your IP strategies in these different geographies. Next slide. And what does it really do? Number one, when you start your journey into India, you can place like a query through the helpline. You can reach out to me, for example, after and ask, this is my intellectual property. I have a patent or a trademark or a copyright I want to protect in India. How can I do it? So you can first start with making an inquiry, and we are happy to schedule a call with you, or you can also drop an email to me to do that. The second thing is we do training. So if you want to know about the entire IP process, in fact, I was telling Advantage Austria that we can actually organize a 35-minute training for SMEs. But today we have short time, but we actually take you through the entire process of managing your IP in India in these trainings. So this is very important. You will get to know about the journey. I can't do that in 10 minutes today. And the third step is there's also a lot of online resources that we have, lots of fact sheets, case studies. So it's important to know that this IP journey in India is well protected and there's a process for it. And so there are a lot of, fact sheets and videos and training materials already available, but you can share with whoever is leading IP within your company. So why is IP important? I mean, today when I even talk to Indian investors or Indian organizations, they will say that if you want to raise money in India, having IP is very important, and having an IP strategy is very important. It kind of also helps you make sure you have exclusive rights to manufacturing, selling, distributing. It's very, very key to think about this as you think about other things when you enter new markets, and position it as a tool to make your technology look attractive and secure your position. Like know your IP. Also do the requisite IP searches in India. There are a lot of free tools to search whether your IP this type of IP already exists, and how you should actually position your own IP strategy. And most importantly, to defend your portfolio and look at also cross licensing. Yeah, next slide, Ajay. So and just to add to that, this basically also incentivizes innovation. It builds business value, and it prevents misuse and promotes economic growth in a proper way for your organization. Yeah, sorry about that. And the important thing to note is that, the actually filing for patent or trademark and it's not expensive to do this in India. It's a very short, small cost that you have to incur to do this. Next slide. Yeah, and before I really, as I said, this training typically takes 30 minutes, but I think through a few case studies, I can demonstrate to you what we have been doing for a few of the European SMEs. So this is a European provider of satellite-based agriculture analytics, and we facilitated a partnership with an Indian agricultural insurance company. And in this process, where today actually this company is implementing a pilot project in India, We've helped them manage their IP through this entire process in a step-by-step manner, raising awareness of IP protection consideration. Just excuse me one moment. Sorry, I just had to take a breath there. But yeah, so just if you see the process we have really incurred out here, we've also advised them on to secure a cross-border sharing of high-resolution satellite data sets. So really securing it before you share it, highlighting considerations around ownership, access rights, permitted use of raw versus processed data. Now, you see, when you're a digital technology company, your risks with IP are a lot higher, but there are these ways to do this, supporting clarity on API-based integration pathways and encouraging structured validation through controlled dashboard access, for example. So the outcome of this is that not only does this company have a pilot in India, but they also today, have a better understanding of India's IP landscape and protection mechanism. Often for a startup, the idea is to, how can I find my first customer, right? So what we always do is, yes, we take you to your first customer, but also help you manage the delicate parts of managing your IP in India. Yeah, next slide. So here's another interesting case study. This is again a European clean tech circular economy company, and we connected them with an investor in India, and they are currently working on implementing their first project in Orissa state in eastern India. So for them, for their IP, basically we have helped kind of review the SME's existing patent portfolio and advising on territorial protection requirements in India. Then we supported the definition of background IP ownership. We recommended a licensing-based technology transfer structure. So, in fact, yesterday when I was talking to a company, they did not even know that they can actually just offer their technology under a license agreement, which is well protected. And one of the points I also want to mention is that the Indian courts, right? We have a very strong IP enforcement. There are lots of case studies, happy to share this offline with any of you, of foreign companies winning cases in India when their IP has been infringed. So the important thing is, yes, you can file your IP and manage it, etc. All the steps I've been telling you. But just in case that there is an infringement, India has a very strong enforcement regime. So the law firms that we work with, they have a lot of experience in helping foreign companies win when their IP has been infringed. So yeah, so the important thing is filing your, making a very good license agreement. We have actually template agreements that we can share with you on how do you make a license agreement with an Indian partner or a joint venture partner in case you want to start your manufacturing in India, you're worried somebody is going to copy it, etc. How do you kind of, draft your license agreement and things like that? So this is a Danish SME. They do, advanced atomic scale manufacturing. This is like a high deep tech project. Here we conducted a trademark level FTO assessment. We looked at the conflicts for the company's brand and technology identifiers, because IP, by the way, is your, it's your patent, it's your trademark, it's your design, it's your copyright. It's so many different things. It could be any label that you have made, etc. So, looking at all of those things is very important. And providing strategic guidance on IP protection in India's first to file system, and aligning trademarks and future patent filings and trade secret strategies. So today, first of all, the assessment found there are no conflicting trademarks or similar registrations in India. This enabled the company to define a clear trademark filing strategy for their organization. And by the way, a lot of these stories, these case studies, they evolve. Like in 2 months from now, there'll be different outcomes, because one of the things I want to mention is that the IP journey of your company, it's not a one-time thing. It's something, you have to have a multi-year strategy. Like at the time of entry, your NDA, your contracts, your license agreements, and then after that, you're maintaining it, right? because your relationships in India are constantly evolving. The status of your projects are constantly evolving. So it's very important for your IP strategy to also evolve. And so we are, like I said, in 2 months' time, each of these IP case studies would have gone a few steps forward as well. Yeah, next slide. So this is what it is, and I'm very happy to have been invited to make this presentation, and happy to help any of you take your first steps and ask any questions. We are here for you. Thank you so much, Advantage Australia, to Advantage Austria, for inviting us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lina Thomas, for the wonderful presentation. And IP and data protection will definitely the topic of the hour. And with that, I would like to invite our next speaker from EY, Ms. Divya Bhushan, to make the presentation with her colleagues.
Yes, hi, Ajay. And thank you so much to Advantage Austria for organizing this session and for giving EY the opportunity to share our thoughts on...
Excuse me, Bhushan, your camera is not turned on.
Yes,
Yeah,
sorry,
now-
I just realized that.
Sure, thank you. Over to you.
Sure. So we are going to be walking you through the practical view of entering India, not so much about why India, but more about why it's important to choose the right business structure. In doing that, we are going to be focusing on decision-making frameworks, entry models, and key regulatory steps which companies need to keep in mind while they're evaluating the business model through which they seek to enter into the Indian market. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Ronak and Megha. All three of us have supported several MNCs through their journey into entry within the Indian market. And, here we are here today to share our practical experience. Sorry. So let me quickly talk about why India. I'm not going to focus on it too much, but a couple of quick call outs, right? Number one, talent and scale. As you know, India has an extremely deep STEM and digital talent base, which makes it a global hub for capability centers. Recognizing that, Indian government has also come up with several GCC-specific state policies which subsidize the capital as well as operating cost of setting up GCCs in India. And with this, we have a lot of foreign companies setting up GCCs in several parts of India. And of course, we'll be talking a little bit more about it as we go along. The second call out I want to make here is on policy momentum. While I understand that there are some concerns and apprehensions around the ease of doing business in India, however, we have come a long way. And in the last few years, there have been several reforms that the Indian government has made across direct taxes, indirect taxes, FDI reforms, etc. Wherein I'm not saying that things are perfect. Yes, there are challenges, but the good part here is that the government is listening, and any challenges in this area, they are willing to listen and carry out reforms, as we have witnessed in the last few years. The third very important aspect to consider is incentives. And when I say incentives, I talk about central government incentives such as production-linked incentives, as well as state government incentives. Now, when I talk about production-linked incentives and Make in India in general, I think one concern that some of the foreign companies have is whether this is meant to focus only on Indian brands or companies where the ultimate holding is Indian, or also multinational corporations. So let me allay that fear right here, right now, and clarify that the focus of all of these incentive schemes is to promote manufacturing in India. So even foreign companies where the ultimate holding is not in India, but a foreign company, as long as they are investing in capital in India and creating employment opportunities in India, are very much entitled to these policies, both at the central and the state government level. At the state government level, what's interesting is that because the states are actually in a way competing to attract foreign investment, there is almost, I would say, a healthy competition between states. So where we have a sizable investment which is being made, we have the opportunity to actually negotiate with states and get a customized package. We have seen instances where companies have been able, we have been able to claw back about 60 to 80% of the investment being made. Of course, those are the exceptional cases, but even on an average, I would say that about 20 to 40% of the investment that a company makes into India can be clawed back through some of these incentive policies. The last point I want to make here on why India could be an attractive destination in terms of the investment is the concept of tax-free zones. So, of course, we have the concept of zero-rated zones, which really subsidize purchases into India. As we know, typically customs duty forms a critical and substantial component in offshore purchases. But if we set up in some of these tax-free zones, then that cost gets substantially subsidized. With that, Ajay, I think we can move to the next slide because, I think from this, it's clear why the time is right and why it makes sense to invest in India. The next question is, how do you approach the entry strategy into India, right? Now, when we talk about entry strategy, there are several aspects to it. But if I were to sort of broad-based into two main areas, I would say the first is about choosing the right structure. And while my colleague Ronak will talk a little bit more about it in detail in subsequent slides, I'll maybe just touch upon some of the pointers that are important for you to keep in mind while concluding on the right business model. The other aspect of finalizing your entry strategy is the location, right? And I'll come to that subsequently. So starting with why is it important to choose the right structure and what are some of the important aspects to keep in mind, right? The first is what kind of an entry vehicle should you be setting up? What I mean by that is you have an option to set up a branch office, a license office, a project office, or a subsidiary. So depending upon what kind of operations we are seeking to undertake in India and what is the most optimum from a tax perspective amongst these models, we can conclude on which of these business structures make sense for us. The other is evaluating the right partner. This becomes especially important if you're looking to enter the Indian market through a distributor or a JV model. The third is being ready from an operational perspective, right? That means having an SOP for your taxes, understanding what the tax compliances are, what licenses we need, what filings we have to do, and ensuring that those are happening at the right time in the right manner. The next is, of course, ensuring we have an optimal supply chain. Moving to the next slide on location. So, like I said, one aspect of deciding the entry strategy is choosing the right structure, but the other aspect is choosing the right location. Now, when we talk about location, there are several aspects which you will have to keep in mind before you zero in on the location. For example, I'll come to incentives in a bit, but outside of that, where do I have the right ecosystem for my kind of sector, right? So do I have a vendor ecosystem in this state? Do I have the right infrastructure I need in this state? Because mind you, that would vary from sector to sector. The kind of infrastructure one might need for renewables versus textile versus defense would be completely different. And therefore, availability of that infrastructure and how subsidized the government is providing it, that becomes extremely critical. So where is my vendor ecosystem? Where is my infrastructure? Do I have talent availability? And what is the cost of this talent? And last but not the least, what are the kind of incentives that the state is making available to me, both fiscal and non-fiscal? By non-fiscal, I mean, am I getting a single window clearance? Am I going to get all my licenses easily? Are my reportings easy? Is my dealings with the tax authorities and other officials in a smooth manner? All of these are sort of non-fiscal incentives also which states offer to kind of ease your entry into that state. The other big aspect of it is incentives, right? So if you look at largely the kind of incentives that states provide across India, they could be capital linked, which means that the amount of investment you make in capital, a percentage of that will be given back to you by the state government. The other is expenditure linked, which could be, again, a function of capital or expenditure made beyond that. Sales linked, which is linked to turnover. What is my production, incremental produce or production in the state? The third could also be linked to GST, which is about how many local sales you're making in that state. So largely you would have incentives linked on A, your capital expenditure, B, your turnover, and C, your local sales and GST. If we look at the picture right now and what are the kind of incentives which the different states in India are offering. So maybe Ajay, if I could request you to come to the next slide, I'll just spend a few minutes. While we have not covered all of the states in India, but this is just giving you a snapshot of where some of the hubs are located and what are the kind of incentives that we are getting. So, if I look at North India, for example, we have Uttar Pradesh, where you have a lot of large electronic and ESDM players. You also have textile and handicraft. You also have a defense corridor. If I look at Haryana, more recently, they have introduced a policy for GCC, but they also have policies for EV and other policies for auto. Similarly, we have Rajasthan, which has a lot of companies in renewables and textiles. If I look at North India, largely I would say that the amount of incentive that we get would vary somewhere from 10 to 30%. Of course, if you're talking about an investment side of 1,000 crores and plus, then this number would shoot up. If I talk about South India, you do get good incentives in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Telangana. In fact, Karnataka also has a specific policy on GCC and several other sectors. Here, again, I would say the average of incentives would be somewhere between 15 to, let's say, 25, 28%. If I look at West, some of the states like Maharashtra and Gujarat, and more recently, Madhya Pradesh as well, more central India, but has an extremely attractive incentive policy. Overall, in our experience, if I had to call out some states, I would say Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Odisha, and Haryana are some of the states where there is a very attractive incentive policy which one can cover. With that, I'll pass it on to my colleagues, Ronak and Megha, to walk you through the different business models and scenarios which would be relevant for you to consider in making your decision.
Thank you, Bhavya. So, hi, everyone. So I think the first scenario that we wanted to really cover is when you want to really not set up your own legal entity per se in India, but let your distributor do the business for you. And you kind of enter into a distributor agreement with them, or let's say if it is more of a franchisee or a licensing arrangement that you want to get into with the distributors, you can always explore that area. And some of the key things that you have to always, which is in line with what Divya was explaining earlier, is obviously the location, the supply chain infrastructure. And one of the key aspects that becomes critical is also that how do you manage your permanent establishment risk, which means from a direct tax perspective, can you mitigate your taxes in kind of substantial, okay, I am sitting outside India, I'll not pay taxes in India per se, and maybe only pay nominal taxes and not subject to the entire full bucket of tax range. And how do you kind of manage your overall eligibility for rules of origin, your GST credits, your custom outlay, as well as also in terms of warehousing, how do you structure your warehouses? In which part of the country do you structure them? Can you look at the tax efficient zones around it? And also compliances around Carotar, FTA benefits. How do you channelize your supply chain? And overall manage your tariff changes, policy updates, and evolving regulatory guidelines. So keep this structure in mind to kind of evaluate your distributor model. Another interesting aspect that we've also seen some companies is while they would want to have a third-party distributor completely operating in a country, they would try and prefer have some local presence in terms of a license office, which kind of acts as a communication channel or more like a supervisor for the local operations happening, so that you don't really establish a legal entity, but you still kind of manage some few people in the system in India, to oversee the distributors and kind of manage the overall market steady. So that is also one evolving model where companies do want to have some control, but let the distributor run the main business. The next slide. Next is when you kind of set up your own legal entity in India, and again, the legal form could be in terms of a wholly owned subsidiary, or let's say you partner with somebody, or a limited liability partnership, or a branch office for that matter. And you do a traditional buy and sell model in India. You import goods and sell to your customers in India. And the customers again could be your B2B business or a B2C business. Similarly, what kind of legal entity do you really incorporate? How is that tax efficient from a long-term perspective? P evaluation, as well as your FTAs, tariffs, Carotar, and all of those things that.
I think we have a network problem with Ronak. Divya, can you take over?
Sure. So just to summarize very quickly on the distribution and trading model, one is, of course, what is the structure that we are looking at in terms of WOS, JV, LLP, BO, branch office there is, but also the key regulatory aspects in terms of getting the relevant licenses in time, mapping what are the different FTAs which are applicable to us so that we can source with optimal customs duty, evaluating the transfer pricing implications in terms of our transactions with our related parties, ensuring we are doing the relevant compliances in India, both in direct tax as well as indirect taxes, identifying any sector-specific license requirements. So in India, for specific sectors, in addition to the standard licenses which are required for the industry to, for example, import and export out of India, there could be sector and product specific licenses. There could be a requirement of licenses like BIS. So very important for that to be identified beforehand. We have seen cases where there is not absolute clarity on whether a particular regulation or a license requirement will apply. So we need to keep that much time so that if we need to take a clarification from authorities, we can do that. We can move to the next.
Sure. May I also invite your colleague, Nika?
Sure. Ronak, are you back? Otherwise, maybe I'll just continue with this and Megha, pass it on to you for GCC.
Sure.
So I think the third business model that we wanted to cover was where you are planning to manufacture in India and essentially make India a hub for your sourcing and supply chain, both for the Indian market, but also for exports. So here, similar to the model that we discussed earlier, the first and most important would be for you to identify what is the right model in India, which is your whether subsidiary, JV, LLP, or whether you want to manufacture through a third party contract manufacturer or a job worker. And that forms part of your entry strategy. The next would be identifying the correct location. Here we look at what the approvals are, what the incentives are, etc. The third is sourcing the correct foreign trade agreements through which we can source goods into India with the minimum customs duty. The next is identifying whether we need a tax-free zone and whether it makes sense in our structure to set up our operations in a FTWZ or a SCZ or a EOU, which are all different facets of an export-free or export-oriented zone. The last part would be around the incentives. Like we discussed, you have to identify, when you identify or trying to conclude the state, we have to identify which state is giving you the optimum incentive, do that negotiation, get a MOU signed, and accordingly proceed on that basis. I think the last thing we wanted to cover was GCCs. Megha, over to you.
Thanks, Divya. So as Divya and previous speakers had highlighted, right, India's deep talent pool, the cost competitiveness, and the mature as well as the growing digital ecosystem is making India a preferred destination for GCCs. Now, we'll give you a brief landscape of the current GCC structure in India and versus what is expected by 2030. So it is predicted that by 2030, India will have about 2,400 GCCs. And that number can potentially, in fact, increase to 2,500 as India is emerging as the world's technology and services hub. In terms of market size, the market size shall potentially reach around, is expected to reach around US dollars 110 billion by 2030 from the current 65 billion. And then the headcount is expected to reach over 4.5 million people compared to the current base of 1.9 million. About 300 plus GCCs have been set up in the last 3 years. And another important aspect is that the global roles within these global capability centers, which have been established in India, they're expected to grow by fourfold from the current 6,500 to approximately 30,000 by 2030. So the views of companies across the globe for India has been changing, from being a low-cost destination center, to center for innovation and highly skilled talent that is leading to this increase in the global roles which are coming to the country. If we talk about the key drivers for India's GCC success, some of the key drivers include, the first one is the regulatory environment, which is being provided in India. So the stable policy landscape, along with the ongoing reforms, to simplify business operations, to reduce compliance requirements. So this has improved investor confidence and enabled GCCs to operate with reduced regulatory risks and uncertainties. The second key driver is the talent availability and the diversity in the talent pool, which is providing India a competitive advantage. So a deep pool of skilled professionals across technology, across analytics, across various business functions, be it finance, payroll, tax, has helped. The diversity as well as the scale of talent has enabled GCCs to build globally competitive teams in India. Another important aspect is the strong infrastructure, both in terms of physical infrastructure as well as the digital backbone that we have. So the modern IT parks that we have, the reliable telecom networks that we have, and the strong cloud infrastructure support. All of these help support seamless global operations, and so this ensures efficient collaboration, data flow, and scalability for these GCC activities.
Thank you very much, Megha. Unfortunately, due to the short time right now, I would ask all the speakers to please turn on their microphone and camera. We have a couple of questions I would like to ask you. Please quickly, if you can turn on your camera and microphone. All the speakers, please. Mr. Munjal. Christina Thomas. Perfect. So we have now moved to the Q&A section, and we have a couple of questions I would like to ask. Number one is this for the many companies, for Austrian companies I'm talking about here. Technology is not the hurdle, but the overwhelming market is the hurdle. And of course, it's always where to start. And so what would be your advice for the mid-sized SME who wants to enter in India? And where do they start? And what are the key caution they should take in their mind? Maybe I would like to ask this to Mr. Munjal first.
Thank you, Ajay, for your question. I think this is a question which keeps on coming to me in terms of that people really have apprehensions, or the organizations in the West really have apprehensions about India as a market. They know the potential of the market, but they don't know where to start and how to really get into the market and how to have adequate guardrails to really safeguard their entry into the market. So I think the first and the most important, setup advice what I give to them is find a local partner over here. Don't just directly jump into the market because there can be many unknown territories and there can be many more local nuances which the Austrian companies may not be aware of. So always try to work and operate with local partners, distributors, or maybe a JV partner in case it is a manufacturing setup. So I think that will safeguard them with a lot of from a lot of problems which the organizations generally face. So I think that's one piece of advice which I would like to give. And of course, there can be many more advices which is different from case to case.
Sure. Thank you. What are your views on that, Ms. Thomas?
Yes, this is something we are doing daily, and I just want to give an example of what we have done very, very recently for two European companies in India. I'm talking about the last, 6 to 8 months ago, and everybody, they realize the size of the Indian market, and clearly they are overwhelmed. And we act as their local one-stop shop, number one, so they can come to us with any question that they have. The important thing that it has to be a multi-pronged approach. So what we have done is, with each of the companies, we first have at least 2 3 conversations with them, which is understanding their requirements, what we need to do for them. And in that process, we draft a very customized roadmap in the first instance, which actually we take the responsibility to do. And then we take them step by step through each step. And because of the kind of experience we have had, like, on an average, we were supporting about 50 European companies per year in India. We are able to showcase to them the steps to manage that feeling of overwhelming. I mean, there's a philosophy in business that says a good plan is the first thing that you need to look at anything you're going to do. And we're looking at the Indian market. I think having a plan outlined for yourself with clear timelines and deliverables is very important. And then you need somebody experienced to work out that plan. Number one. Two is, once that plan is worked out, you need to follow the steps. Oftentimes, European companies jump with excitement. Like, they meet and they come to a trade fair, they meet a partner, and they say, okay, we're signing the agreement, we're going ahead. And what happens in that is that the key steps, like understanding the market, doing both secondary and primary research before coming up with a strategy and a plan, they miss those steps. They sign an agreement, let's say, with a partner after coming to a trade fair. And then they're like, oh my God, that's going wrong, and this is going wrong, and so on and so forth. So, just to wrap this up, I think looking at really the process and
Yeah.
thinking short, medium, and long term from month one of your thinking about India is extremely important. And and not to just think, okay, I come to India, sign an agreement, and I'm in India right now. So think medium to long term as well. That would be my first feedback, to get over that sense of feeling overwhelmed. It's not overwhelming at all. Let me tell you that it's a great process. It's a very exciting market to be in, and no better time than now to come to India.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. And from the team EY, whoever wants to answer the same questions, please proceed.
Right. So I think choosing the overall market study and location and kind of business you want to operate. And I think it's rightly said, we should have that vision that, okay, how do you want to scale from day zero to maybe in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, and also always have a fallback option that, okay, keep in mind if things go haywire, how do I take an exit? What is the exit route also? So we should always be mindful that, okay, things may not go always in the right direction. So be planned and assured and work with the right partners. And that would be the right method.
Thank you very much. With that, we will conclude the webinar, and it's my duty and honor to also tell Austin audience that we will have a couple of events in the coming weeks, a month. The first is Forum Indian, where we will have the Austrian Trade Commission available in Austria on site to talk about India opportunity. Then we have another webinar coming up, Future of Green Tech in India, a series of our Future of India series, and also followed by WIMI, or the business delegation to India, and then followed by a special webinar on future of railways and metro railway infrastructure in India. We will keep on adding layer of knowledge to you so you can analyze from a distance and on site also what is happening here in India. And with that, we come to an end. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar. We were quite on time, and wish you rest of the day a very good luck. Thank you very much.